This video is part of a series of interviews with some of the parachute engineers, scientists, and developers who have been responsible for the most significant and advanced parachute systems of the last half-century, and was created by the Aviation Trail Parachute Museum in Dayton, Ohio. In June 2017, at the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Forum, Charles Lowry, longtime deceleration researcher and member of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, interviewed Koki Machin about his work and accomplishments in the parachute industry.
We'll be speaking to Koki, my good friend. My first question to you is, would you introduce yourself and tell us your name and birthplace and where you live now?
Well, my name is Koki Machin. I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I live today in Galveston County, Texas, working at Johnson Space Center.
And what was your education and where did you go to school?
Well, let's see, I went to school in South Florida, obviously, all the way through high school, and I have a bachelor's degree in Aeronautical Engineering from the University of Alabama.
And how did you get into parachutes, Koki?
How did I get into parachutes? Let's see, back in the early 90s, NASA was looking at making a crew return vehicle for going up the station. The shuttle program was still going on, but we wanted something to bridge the gap after shuttle. And the X-38 was the test body. It's a lifting body. It was a test bed, and the landing system was going to be a ram air parafoil. And the guy that was in charge of that aspect, the landing and recovery system, was a guy named Rob Meyerson, a friend of mine. I had worked with him for many years in the aeroscience branch, and he knew I had testing experience, so he asked me to come and help him conduct a parachute test. Didn't know a thing about parachutes, but that started my career in parachutes.
And you worked all of that time at Johnson Space Center?
I've been at Johnson Space Center since 1982, co-oping full-time since 1987.
Well, tell us about the most notable and the best parachute programs you've worked on through your career.
I've worked on two very notable ones, X-38 being the first one. It was a ram air parafoil. At the time, it was the largest ram air parachute in the world, to my knowledge, and we had a lot of challenges there, technical challenges that we had to overcome. And then the one I've done for the last 10 or 11 years, which is I'm the chief engineer for the parachute system on Orion. We call it CPAS, and that's the other major piece I've done.
In your work with the X-38, with the largest wing ever at that time, that has carried on into Army use, has it not?
In fact, we took it from the Army. The Army had a guided precision air delivery system, GPADS, and it was kind of not really mature, but they were trying it, and we took what they were doing and put a lot more technical background into it and advanced that, and then it went back to the Army, as you say, and now they're using up to 10,000 square foot. We were 7,500 square feet. So they're now up to 10,000 square feet and various smaller sizes for payloads.
Tell us a little bit more about CPAS. What's it used for, and how? Tell us a few more way stations along the...
CPAS, so Capsule Parachute Assembly System. It is the terminal descent system for Orion. Orion is the new capsule that NASA's building, meant to go beyond low Earth orbit, moon, beyond. And the parachute system is, in many respects, a larger version of what Apollo did, which obviously you worked on. And so we have larger drogues, larger mains, similar challenges in terms of the modeling and how to hand off from one parachute system to the next.
And what was your biggest technical challenges along your career? Technical.
I'll tell you, we've had a lot of challenges in CPAS, but X-38, maybe part of it is because I was so young in parachutes, but it seemed to have just far more gaps to step in. And we had trouble from the very early part. We just couldn't get the wing to fly properly. It was very soft, and it took a while. We had to bring in some experts, outside experts, Charlone, Bill Gargano, and they kind of immediately pointed out some of the flaws in the work we were doing, and we went back and undid those. But we also had trouble selling it, frankly. I mean, you start out the ballistic system, which is a drogue, you transition to gliding flight, it's always kind of ugly, and it was almost as much about how we looked as how well we performed. And so there were a lot of difficulties in that transition to gliding flight, and just, it was beyond engineering, which was surprising to me at that point in my career.
How about your CPAS challenges? Do you have any showstoppers there?
We have not had showstoppers. In fact, I'd tell you the biggest challenges we've had on CPAS, two things come to mind. The system's requirements continue, the way the spacecraft evolved and how it influenced what we had to deliver, that wasn't really on my radar either. And we have evolved as the spacecraft has evolved and kind of had to dance with them on that. The other part is the test techniques. We've had more trouble with test techniques than we have with our actual parachutes. We've crashed 2 different payloads. Both of them were related to test technique.
Mm-hmm. How about, you have any tales about your work experience? Something odd or strange or funny, something important along the way that stick out? What do you tell your grandchildren?
There was a time we were testing on X-38, and has nothing to do with parachutes, mind you. We had landed, there was a missile. The missile would strike into the ground and embed itself. It was very impressive. But all these little release parachutes would be drifting around, and we'd assign people to go pick them up. And so Carmen Blankenship, the test director at YPG, and I were standing on the ridge watching everyone do their work. And Dave Hillebrand worked at KSC, asked me, can I go get the drogue? And I said, oh, sure, go get it. So he gets in his truck, and the terrain's really rough. And so it took him a long time to get to it. And we had put these pingers, tracking devices on him, kind of like what's used in animal tracking. And he would get out every now and then, and you could see him pointing it, and he'd get back in, and after some point in time, it became apparent to Carmen and I, but what happened is YPG people had picked up the chute already. But it was so difficult to get off the drop zone, Dave was tracking the YPG people. And they both together were slowly moving off, because we didn't have any cell phones at the time. And it's just totally not related to parachutes, but interesting.
Those things happen. What about the proudest moment in your career?
I've done some fun stuff. But related to parachutes, I'd say it was the first X-38 landing at Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah.
We took it up on the wing of the B-52, dropped it at, I think, 42,000 feet. It flew for a while, and then they put the parachutes out, and we took damage, and we were interactive with the system back then, and it was frightening. You have the helicopter telling you you're missing the top panel of several cells, and you're like, oh my God. But that was actually very cool.
What people did you enjoy working with that stick out, and who did you most admire in the industry?
I've had the opportunity. So when I was in college, I was very into computational fluid dynamics. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I showed up at NASA, and the first thing my boss said was, and it was pretty clear he didn't expect me to show up that day either. So that was kind of off-putting, but great guy, Rick Barton. He says, I need someone to go to this wind tunnel tomorrow at Texas A&M and start working on crew escape. And I was so disappointed because I always thought testing was for the people who couldn't hack the math, right?
Yeah.
But I was totally wrong, man. 30-some years later, all I've ever done is testing.
Yeah.
And what it's afforded me is the opportunity to meet people with a broad range of educations, from the PhDs to the people like me with just undergraduate degrees, to people who never went to college, riggers, people like Roy Fox, who are brilliant but get lost in the noise. And so, to pick just a few, I'd say Roy Fox, Dean Wolfe. So there's 2 broad ends of the spectrum, Dr. Dean Wolfe and Roy Fox. And then people in between, Rob Sinclair, Elsa Hennings. It's an amazing collection of talent.
What was it like when you first got into the field as a summer guy?
Scary.
Yeah.
Here's this 24,000 pound weight tub that Rob wants to recover, and I'm thinking, oh my God, does somebody know how to do this? It was scary, and often it's been scary.
How about how you did your job then versus how you do it now? Or how you see
I've changed
things?
a lot, right? So I think the technology has changed. We were putting instruments inside of parachutes when no one else had done it, it seemed. I don't know. But I've also changed. So how I see things and how I work around issues, and I've been able to draw some really good talent within my division at JSC and kind of built a team around me, and then I get to work with people like Rob and Elsa or Tom Bennett at Pioneer, and it's this coordination. So as I've grown older, I've gone into different levels of what I do.
Oh yeah. What about what important parachute innovations have you seen or participated in? In the time you've been in parachutes, what has been innovated that sticks out?
Well, I thought the mid-span reefing that Roy Fox had on the parafoil was brilliant. It was reasonably complicated, but it took away, it allowed you to open it a little more benignly and transition to, into the gliding flight. I think a lot of the stuff we've done on CPAS, you know, with Rob Sinclair in this case, and Elsa helping, and others, many, many others, we've gotten rid of most of the metallics. We got rid of the metal rings up there for the reefing. We got rid of the vent lines, which is something we first tried in X38 with the drogue. So I think some of the things we've done that are kind of subtle but have improved reliability is what I see as.
Well, what breakthroughs would you like to see now in the industry? What innovations?
I don't know if it's innovations. It's hard for me to predict an innovation. I can tell you that the analytical capability needs to catch up. When I first came into NASA, CFD was a new item. We were doing shock-shock interaction on the launch vehicle, and a lot of people didn't think it would ever get there, but it did. CFD is now used in many cases to augment aero databases, in some of the cases to predict the aero before you ever get to a wind tunnel. I think we need to get there computationally. I know it's hard with parachutes. I think there's a lot of mistakes and a lot of innovations that might open up to being explored with computational techniques. And people like Ben Tutt and Ben Kirk in my division are actually pushing that forward today. So,
well, under your leadership, I think the analytical capability of parachutes has exploded. It's ahead and sure than it's ever been.
Well, that's a nice compliment, but we built on what you did.
Well, you've come so far, and what you're saying is that you think it has a ways to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Will it get there?
Oh, of course. I think it's a matter of investment, and I think it takes big organizations, NASA, DoD. Companies have a limit to what they can achieve in terms of their, I forget what the budget's called, but I think it's going to take programs like the one I'm working now and some others to push that line forward.
What about lessons that your work life has taught you? Your work life.
My work life has taught me patience.
That's good.
I have a son with autism, and so it bridges back to, you can't control everything. And there are a lot of things that you end up inheriting, and you need to figure out what's important and not deal with the little minutiae that, while it'd be cool to fix it, we're all kind of obsessive that way, engineers. It's not important sometimes.
Well, tell us about your immediate family.
Well, I am married to Alice Turner, my wife, and we have 2 children. A 17-year-old, I mentioned, he has autism, and great kid, but, a lot of work. Every day's an adventure at home.
2 boys.
2 boys and a 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And my family is actually, my parents are from Cuba, so I'm the first person born in this country in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up speaking Spanish before I spoke English, so it's always been a bit of a challenge to catch up.
Are your parents nearby you?
They live in South Florida still. I live in Texas. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, that gets us to what non-work lessons, and you kind of mixed the two on the earlier question.
Yeah.
Should I ask this?
Non-work lessons, it becomes a blur. The one thing I would say is, patience, just patience. It's hard because we're also, especially as culture advances, and we're so immediate in return, and yet sometimes it's the long, patient walk that gets you where you need to get.
Okay, tell me this, what advice would you give to a young engineer coming into the parachute industry?
I'd tell 2 things. First off, I would say you should explore jobs, and in fact, if you can get into a cooperative education program, which is what I did out of Alabama, and I got assigned to JSC Johnson, go work before you before you graduate. Try and get experience, because what I found was it wasn't so much finding what you wanted to do as learning the things you didn't like, because that helps you figure out what really matters to you. So that, and the other thing is to be flexible. I said that, I first showed up and I wanted to do computational work. I went to the branch that was the spearhead of computational work, and I ended up in testing, and yet I wouldn't have done it different in hindsight. So you just got to be flexible. You've got to allow things, sometimes you got to go with it.
You're a highly respected and highly loved person in the program, and the program you're on is very wide, and it covers the whole nation, and you've made the job a pleasant experience for so many people. I'll say that. If you didn't want to add it, I wanted to add that.
The Aviation Trail Parachute Museum in Dayton, Ohio, tells the story of the development of the freefall parachute from its invention at Dayton's McCook Field after World War I through the vital role the parachute plays today in the decelerator industry and safely landing spacecraft. The museum includes interactive exhibits, artifacts, historic photographs, and films. Aviation Trail Incorporated has developed a self-guided tour of select aviation-related sites that are open to the public in the Dayton area. Aviation Trail's mission is to preserve and promote the Dayton area's unique aviation heritage, beginning with the invention of the airplane by Wilbur and Orville Wright. Find out more at aviationtrailinc.org.